Masachet Hullin Daf Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph 11 lines down. Amar Avar Abbas is another halacha regarding Tlat Daim. Kli she'en bo riv'ait, a kli that does not have a riv'ait of water in it. And ultimately when the daim you can't use for Tlat Daim. Now the Gemara says that anything has that. Why is that? Why do you need the water inside? And Amar Avar Abbas says Kli she'en mahazik riv'ait. If the vessel does not hold a riv'ait inside, and ultimately you can't use it for Tlat Daim. Now it sounds like ha. Mahzik, but if it could hold it, after lead base, sounds like even if you don't need the water inside, it's still kosher. The Gemara says, "La kashas na'asira halehad." The first statement is where only one person is washing. That's why it has to eat. That's why we need to have the tray. And second, halacha is that even less is not enough. And where two people are washing. It's not like Mishnah says. Me ربيعيت نقيم ندم أحد one ربيعيت can be used two people. One person not even for two. ما رجع مما كابيتو أمانا you require a vessel. Mala in says ahuzata. Yeah, are you worried about how the water looks? Does it have to look like water? Mala says yes. Actually, what are you worried about how much water like a reveiti? Mala says in he says yes. I'm worried about the vessel and the appearance. Actually, look بما أنا reveiti. Time she says هي reveiti نقول دايما حرب تشنايم one reveiti can use for one or two people. But that's not true. Meaning that it's not. It's what he holds that it's not required. It's not true. Shani Hazan because over there is different. Mishum deka atu. Mishare tahara. Because less than if you eat the water is by second person comes from the remainder of the purification. Meaning there has to be at least a revi to begin. Atkin Rav Yaakov min ahar bekod natlam b'ad Rav Yaakov min ahar kod min revi'it sized cup to serve as the measurement, the standard measurement to know how much at least you have a revi'it. Atkin Rav Ashi b'hutzad kuza bat Rav Yaakov. Rav Ashi means same thing in hutzad. Amar says mekufat habish shetikna, the cover of a cask that one changed to wash with. Notlin medayim you can use for your hands. Then Achim says oh mekufat habish shetikna, notlin medayim you can use. Hamet ukshifat should not use a hamet or a kish or a kefisha. These are type of bottles made from hides. Also, you could use sack of a kupa, a sack or a wicker basket, even though they could hold water, and you cannot use for washing because they're not considered water vessels. If I have a question, what's halacha? Can I eat bread with holding it with a cloth, or do I still need to wash it? My hands. The Gemara says, are we worried maybe you still might touch with your hands, therefore you can't eat, and therefore you have to wash? Although or not, the Gemara says, a proof, because you when they give a piece of dog food smaller than an egg is in the Masechet Sukkah. נותנים מהפך אחוז באוכלו אחוז מתי, כדבר נקלוט, נקלט אחת הזוגה, so small. ואין מבריח הרב, he did not say Rekanazan. Madlab hakabatzah, but it didn't sounds like if it was more than a kibatzah, he would need to wash. Similarly, you can't use a cloth. The Gemara said, "Tuma hakabatzah b'ay sukkah b'ay beracha." No, it's not translated the truth. The inference is that if he was a kibatzah, you would need to eat in the sukkah and you would need to say Rekanazan. Tashma, another question. The Shmuel Ashkei Chelel, the part of Shmuel found Rav eating bread with his hands wrapped in a cloth. Amaleh, and he told them simply because he didn't want to wash his hands. Abdin Kedina, you're doing it correctly. Malay says, Da'ati Kisra alai. Said, I wash my hands, but I am just a neat freak. I don't want touching food with my hands. I am not the same way. I eat food with my hands, but not if it's like cheese curls or chips that are very dirty. That I wear gloves. Make fun of me all you want. I wear gloves. My wife makes fun of me. I'm used to it. Rabbi Zera went to Eretz Israel. Ashkino Rabbi Ami Rabbi Asi Teka Achel B'Ba'el Hamatot. Even Rabbi Ami and Asi eating bread with the a worn out bottles to like rub their hands with. I said to them, seemingly because they didn't want to wash hands. Today, you're making a mistake. Great rabbi, like you are making a mistake. How that takes it come up, but he said he's there. He's worried about his hands. That's why he did it. Rob did it. It's not the why, but you should wash your hands. Gemara says, and then he washed his hands, but he didn't touch it because he didn't. He wrapped his hands because he didn't like it. But so for sure, you guys should wash your hands. Gemara says. اشتمت في هذا مرة التحويط بلد يشمل. He forgot that halacha. يترب ما بلو خيط ما. Those who eat truma can use a cloth to eat because they are very very careful because they're kohanim. They're very extra careful. Below tiru ma belo chayt not those who eat the cholin level of tahara, even though the high level is still not. Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Asi, kohanim, and they were kohanim, and that's why they were allowed to. You might have a question. Let's say someone's feeding him. Today, sometimes the person who's being fed need to wash hands or not. Although, first Tashma, the Ravuna Bar Sehura have a Ka'e Kamed Ravuna. He was standing for Ravuna, Balam Lehumsa. He roasted a piece of meat and coals and put it together with the bread into Ravuna's mouth. Va'achil and Ravuna ate it. Amar, they told him, he loved it Ravuna, if you weren't Ravuna, Lo Safina Lach, I would not feed you. Why? Matama, why? Love me, shouldn't say, because obviously be careful. Seemingly, that if I'm being fed, I don't need to wash my hands. The Gemara says, La. The Kadim Mashiach didn't make it out. The reasons why is that really you do need to wash your hands if you're being fed because you might touch it, and therefore why was he saying like Munam Nuna is because he knows that Nuna is very careful with his hands. Tashma, Amara Bizera Marav. Person should not place a piece of bread into the mouth of a waiter. But not like that. Once the waiter wash his hands. You feed the waiters because it was unhealthy for them to be feeding it, bringing food without eating. And the waiter should make a beracha on every cup of wine that's given to drink because he doesn't know if he's getting it, right? So a person gives him wine, very nice and dandy, but there's no guarantee he's getting another one. Therefore, gets a new cup, he drinks. The Yemen alcohol Perusa does not make a new beracha on each piece of bread because people give more bread than wine. Rabbi Yochanan says, even the bread he adds proof. He makes a beracha. And the Gemara said, "Man, ba, beish lama the Rabbi Yochanan kashan." Now see that according to Rabbi Yochanan from Rav, because Rav is referring to a case where there's a hashu person by the meal, and therefore he'll for sure give the waiter bread, and that's why he won't. That's why he only needs one beracha. You have to look at the hashu. In the case of Yochanan, where he has to make a new beracha, there's no hashu person who's not taking care of him. But regardless, how the Rav held, LM came to Yashin Zaydav. We still see that he needs to make sure that the waiter washes his hands, seemingly even if he's being fed. Gemara says, Shani Shamash Titarit is different. Maybe a person being fed is not to wash his hands, but the waiter is different because he's very busy and therefore his hands might be dirty. Number nine, Shamash person should not give piece of bread to the waiter. Ben and Shakos Bedo, whether or not the cups in the hand of the waiter. Ben Shakos Bedo Shabbat, over the cups in the hand of a bite. Shema Ya'alev Devar Kaklam is because maybe someone will choke, meaning someone might, let's say the host might get upset that you're feeding him and he might choke on the food. The waiter did not wash his hands. Asuli 10% we cannot have bread put in his mouth. You know that a question. Ma'achil tzarich intadaim. The guy who's feeding the person, the feeder, does he have to wash his hands or not? تشمع بنقول أنا مش نشط ترويش شلون بلاقي المير مدي حق كده أحب ما بين تطبخ هات لبناء كتان one can wash her hand one hand with the water and keep pour to feed bread to their child who's the minor أمر لав على شمال ذكان شمال ذكان they said شلون رسل على الخيل بيدو أحد did not want to feed his child even with one hand to wash it because رأى love شيء أخيل وشيء ده when they forced him to wash his hands and say no this is mutar you gotta wash your hands to feed your kid so we see that someone who's feeding has to wash. Mar says, Marbea hatam mishum the shikta over there, they're washed because of shikta, which is a type of spirit, and that's why we're required. Tashma can prove that. What is Shmuel Ashkele of Shmuel the Kavahir? Shmuel found Shmuel crying. Amali told him, Am I Kavahir? Why are you crying? Because my picture hit me. Amali, like, why did he hit you? The Amali Kasafit Levav Loma Shit. He told me, you fed my son and you did not wash your hands. Amar Mashit is like, okay, so why didn't you wash your hands before feeding him bread? Amar they said to him, Who achil ana mashina? He's like, he's eating, why should I wash? So Shmuel's father thought that Shmuel was also eating. So he's like, why didn't you wash? He's like, I wasn't eating. Amar Shmuel's father said to him, it's not enough that your teacher did not learn the halacha, but now he's hitting people as well. Yani, you were right. A person who's eating because someone's feeding him. Tzarich Hamadani has to wash his hands. But the feeder does not need to wash his hands. Okay, the Mishnah. So Radam Basar Gvinash a person can wrap meat and cheese in one cloth. Lavashli Nogim is not touching directly to each other. Rashba Gomer. Sheni Achsani, there are two guests staying in the same inn. Bachlina Shulchan Achad, they can eat on the same table. Zeb Sav one guy had meat and cheese, but they're not worried because they're not worried about sharing. The only time we worry about sharing is when people know each other. Gemara says, "V'chino but that might happen." So we said, why is it if it's in the cloth, as long as they're not touching, but it's okay. But they're both cold; they won't absorb. Gemara says, yes, it's true that you don't need to peel it off. You have to at least wash it off if it's touching. Gemara says, They brought the case of the two people in the same inn. They don't recognize each other. But they do recognize each other. It's asur because they might feed each other. And after being proof as well, the Bible there. Shnei Alphanim change that Hul if Nagahad, Zeba Mitzavon, one guy's coming from Rav Zeba Mitzavon, one guy from himself, Zeba Bechatzal, this guy comes with the meat, Zeba, this guy comes with the cheese. Ochina Shahad, they eat on the table. Zeba Zaba is gonna each their own food. They ain't no question, you don't have to worry. Lo Asra, B'Tilachat, they're not worried unless you bundle it together. The Gemara says, what's the difference? Where I said, look, into the Chad rather means they know each other and they're bundling it together because they know each other. And therefore, if they do know each other, they have to separate it on the table. Amar le, Rav Yirmiyah levar Shalmi alav Shnei achim, two brothers who know each other, Makpin zel zeh, but they don't like each other. Ma, what's the halacha? We're not worried about them feeding each other, they're fighting. Amar Amar le, Yomru kol ha-sirikin asurin, people will say that all other sirikin asur, u sirikei baitos mutarin, sirikin baitos mutar, meaning this was a special halakha that you can't make designs on matzot. But one person figured out how to make it without problems. So the Makamran said over there a phrase, oh, we can't allow certain stamps, but we're going to allow this guy make stamps. So the same thing applies over here. If we allow these two brothers who are fighting, people might not know that they have a special halakha because they're fighting not to eat, and therefore they might think it's okay for them. So therefore we're saying it should not be allowed, no exceptions. But to me, according to what you just said, only has one clothing. Why is that a wash and clone? But why? Yomru kol aserikin mu'asirin b'sekei b'tasutrin. Why don't they say the same thing? Oh, how did this guy wash? Maybe the Gemara says mutar. The Gemara says it's different. Over there is different because the fact that people are going to see that his belt is on the tunic as he's washing it. They realize that's his only tunic because that's why his belt is still on there, and therefore they'll realize, oh, that's why he's allowed, and they won't think it's mutar for them.